Chapter 3. We are going to start with the hair now. Yeah, I'm still mumbling in myself in that video. Sorry about that. You won't hear anything except for the voiceover, which is better, if I may say so, because the mumbling I do when I'm painting sometimes doesn't make enough sense. So what are you going to do? We're going to do the hair, first layer. So it's not really that fine still. I'm going to start out with a round brush, but you also can use any type of brush with which can paint thin lines as such. For example, if you have a nice filbert brush that's still quite in shape, then it's also useful. So I'm mixing the transparent oxide red with white, and I add some yellow ochre to it, and also a bit of blue to make a nice mixture. It's more or less the colors we have. So I have this kind of, yeah, how to say, dullish brown. You would expect. So I'm first trying to paint some highlights, and you can make thin strokes with this type of brush. So if you have a filbert brush you really like, you can either move them sideways with the entire brush or make thin lines with it when you use the short side of the brush, which I'm doing mostly when I'm painting hair, because sometimes it's just too wide. And especially in this case, the portrait we are painting, the hair is quite, yeah, it's not that straight, so to say. It's kind of it's wavy hair with lots of freestanding locks and stuff. So let's try to do our best and just paint in some strokes at the highlight places. Don't worry, it doesn't matter that it's not precise yet, so you can make lots of mistakes at this point. It doesn't really matter. As we move along, you will gradually get it more into shape. So it's more or less the same process as with the face, but even less exact, so to say, because you have more room to wiggle. Although, especially when it comes to certain areas like this left part, left of the eye, it needs to show some resemblance, you know. The way the hair falls is also very typical for a person. But if a certain, like, block or anything falls differently, well, I don't think that people will recognize this as such. So I'm keeping this mixture of warm colors. I'm going to get a bit darker now. So add some sienna as well, sienna blue ochre and some transparent oxide with less white. A bit more blue because it's also a bit cool at some spots. I'm really trying to make just quite broad brushstrokes at the moment, so not too refined, and to find some kind of highlight structure to do the main parts. So not really subtle ones. Individual hairs are out of the question at the moment. They are not necessary. Most important thing still is observing, looking, finding the right spot for the right color. And it's a lot of observing when doing portraits to get someone exactly as they are supposed to be. It's really not that easy. So now I'm going to add also some cooler tints. There are different areas in the hair. You can see there are warm spots, like if you go downward a bit more. But there are also some cooler spots, especially on top of her hair, there where the light is shining and reflecting the sky, which is kind of bluish. So the picture is taken in daylight conditions, and you can notice that if you go downward that it's not a reflection of the sky anymore, but probably other things like walls or even the sun. I'm trying to make some gradients. That's also very important when you have wavy hair, that there is some kind of shine. That the shiny effect comes from these kind of subtle gradients that goes along the stroke of the hair, so you can't really make gradients in other directions for that matter. Although in some cases you might even have curls and stuff. Yeah. Now I'm putting on the cooler color. You can see that there is much more blue in it. It's a whole different sheen. It's different. But you can see it in a lot of portraits, that there is a different color on top of the hair. And when you go further down, that there is much more warmth. And over here, there is also less of this, let's say, this beach look here. It's much cleaner, much shinier, and less wavy. So you really get this clear sheen. Yeah. By mixing, I tend to do a lot with these basic colors, this burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and ultramarine blue and white. Those are the 4 basic colors that are always on my palette if I paint seawater or anything else. It's always there. and it's very practical to paint like natural colors that are not so saturated. It's more trial and error sometimes when I put on a color. Later on I can decide to just give it a whole other direction by putting some darker shades in it, or even brighter. It all depends. It's time to move into the warmth once more. And the easiest way to do that, of course, if you want to get enough warmth, is to use some transparent oxidorite into the mixture. You can see that I'm a very fast painter as I move along with my brush. It's not really something you should copy if you don't feel like doing it. By other means, it's really my thing. I am a very fast painter when it comes to the brush movements. I have lots of brushwork in my paintings as well. I like to have to paint with lots of work. It's not that I don't want to be as effective as possible, but I think that's more charming if you have a painting that shows that you have actually struggled with it. Over here there's more or less the same color, so down here, and well, I think it's time to move into the dark zone. If you want to just make sure that you don't make it too cool, you can add a bit of burnt sienna or transparent oxidorite into the mixture. But you can also use just blue and transparent oxidorite 1:1. So you really have the most natural kind of blackish shade you can make with the color. I'm trying to define the area where her hair is overlapping her face, but there's still one piece of hair falling over her eye, so I'm going to do that one later. As you can see, it's quite easy to mix them into each other and make smooth gradients. Actually, it's a lot of fun to do. I think that's the funniest part when it comes to painting hair, is that you can make these nice gradients when painting wet in wet. Of course, when we start the next layer, everything will be dry by then. If you use this alkyd resin medium. On the other hand, if you use like linseed oil or things, it might be that your layer is still wet, so you can work in it for much longer. I'm trying to define the here on the top of her head, and on the right side it's also not the definite version of things, so probably it will be changing somewhat, but for the main part it won't be too much work. I think most work will be down on the shoulders and next to her neck, where the fine hairs are all standing out in different directions. And that's a lot of work. So I'm not going to demonstrate all of the first layer. I'm going to focus on some areas so I can show you how you can really make these gradients with the black mixture, or even with pure black if you like. But be careful with that, because some blacks are very strong, like ivory black, for example. So in the end the hair will be somewhat longer, but the dress underneath it will be shining through still. So I think it's fairly advisable to leave that one, to spare that one out, and to paint the dress first before you actually paint the hair. It's really funny to make your hair kind of smooth like it. Watch out when you're painting with dark that the highlights get too dark as well at some point. So you need to put in some more highlights. You can do this later on in the next layer, of course, if you like to. So putting on some more highlight. You can see it with a lot of warmth. Since I already used a lot of dark colors, when I'm mixing into it, it probably won't get as warm as you want it to be. So you can overcompensate by using more warm colors in your mixture before applying them. It's a fairly it's very easy to just try and see what happens, because you don't have to get everything right straight away. And of course you have to make sure that you don't make it too structured, because hair tends to be quite chaotic when it's like this. So there is not really a procedure in which you can make a shortcut when painting these kinds of hairs, unless of course you want to make some kind of generalization. So right now I'm trying my best to make the highlights stand out once more. And work back with a bit of black. This is the first black I'm using in this layer. This is also the darkest spot next to her, the bright side of her face. So you have this really nice contrast there. Also a bit here. Well, I hope you get the idea by now. And next up, we will be talking about the face once more. So enjoy.